Hello students, you are with Bindu Chaudhary and we are continuing social science class here, and in this class we are doing at present chapter 8th, and the name of the chapter is Women, Caste and Reform. Today we are taking its first part. But before taking first part, what happened in the previous chapter of ours? Yes, in the previous chapter we had learned about the students problem. We had learned about the पाठशालाज, न्यू अमेंडमेंट्स, वुड्स डिस्पैच, मैकालेज पद्धति जो हम बोलते हैं उसके लिए हमने रीड आउट किया था. सो हेयर इज अ डिफरेंट चैप्टर, वुमेन, कास्ट एंड रिफॉर्म. In this chapter we will read about all these things. So let's start about this one. Have you ever thought of how children lived about 200 years ago? It's really amazing for ourselves. Yes, have you imagined all these things? कि 200 साल पहले बच्चे कैसे रहते होंगे, उनको क्या फैसिलिटीज़ मिल रही होगी, क्या नहीं मिल रही होगी. Nowadays most girls from middle class families go to school and often study with boys. Yes, you have co-education in your schools. Most of you have co-education. But what happened in that time? On that time also many crises for the purpose of the children happened. What we had continued that in the previous chapter. Here you know that the girls and boys, you both are studied in the same class. On growing up, many of them go to colleges and universities and take up jobs after that. It means co-education is there, whether that may be boy or that may be girl. You are getting a job. They have to be adults before they are legally married. See the main concept here. At present, children became adults, and before legally married they matured themselves, and widows can remarry too at present. It's not a new thing at present, but what happened before this one? Yes, before 200 years ago, what happened to the women's problem if they became widows? Most of the problem is critical. All women, like all men, can vote and stand for elections. This one is the situation of at present era. Maybe women, maybe men, both have rights to vote and both have rights to stand for elections. Of course, these rights are not actually enjoyed by all. At present also this situation occurs because most of the people are not aware of their rights and duties. So here see this one. Poor people have little or no access to education, and in many families women cannot choose their husbands. It means whatever parents, guardians tells them, at present also they are doing the same one when we are talking about the range of the poor peoples. 200 years ago things were very different. Yes, really a lot of changes takes place at present era. Most children were married off at a very early age. Both Hindu and Muslim man could marry more than one wife. एक से ज़्यादा पत्नियों से, भले ही वह हिंदू है, भले ही वह मुसलमान है, शादी कर सकते थे. तो अब क्या हो रहा है? क्या अभी भी हिंदू जो हैं वो एक से ज़्यादा मैरिजेस कर सकते हैं क्या? एक से ज़्यादा पत्नियां रख सकते हैं क्या? नो, नॉट एट प्रेजेंट. और हम बात करें अगर मुस्लिम्स की, तो मुस्लिम्स में भी इनके जो नियम हैं वो वाकई में बहुत कड़े हैं. In some parts of the country, widows were praised if they choose death by burning themselves on the funeral pyre of their husbands. See this one. When on that time it's a priority praises, and widows who chose death by burning themselves, they were praised on that time. Women who died in this manner, whether willingly or otherwise, were called sati, meaning virtuous women. So on that time sati pratha was there, and in sati pratha women took the dead body of their husbands and they got burnt, maybe by willingly or maybe by otherwise, maybe by force, but they became the virtuous women or satis of that time. See this one. This one is the picture how this sati pratha going on. Sati pratha, this picture was painted by Balthazar Solvin in the year 1813. लेडीज़ को खुद को ही यहाँ पे डेड बॉडी के संग में जला दिया जाता था, या वो खुद विलिंगली अपनी गोदी में अपने हस्बैंड का डेड बॉडी लेकर सती हो जाती थी. Women's rights to property were also restricted on that time. The women were not allowed to take the properties of their husbands as well as their parental homes also. Besides, most women had virtually no access to education. This one is the worst problem of that time. So, women had no access to educate themselves. In many parts of the country, people believed that if a woman was educated, she would become a widow. See, the superstitions were there on that time, and the people thought that if any woman was educated, then she became a widow. So this one is a very critical situation of that time. How a educated woman became a widow? No one knows that what was the concept of that peoples, but they had this much of conception. Differences between man and woman were not the only ones in society. This one is the main issue. In most regions, people were divided along lines of caste. Here we are discussing about women as well as caste also. See this one. Brahmins and Kshatriyas considered themselves as the upper caste. Then who were in the lower caste on that time as well as on this time also, students? So consider this chapter one by one deeply, okay? So Brahmins and Kshatriyas considered themselves as the upper class people of that time. Others such as traders and money lenders. Traders and money lenders, often referred to as Vaishya, were placed after them. पहले कौन आते थे बच्चों? पहले ब्राह्मण और क्षत्रिय आते थे, and then after traders and money lenders came because they themselves referred as the Vaishyas of that time. Then came peasants and artisans such as weavers and potters, referred to as Shudras. और उसके बाद में किसका नंबर आता है? आफ्टर दैट peasants and artisans. Artisans में भी कौन कौन? In artisans, weavers and potters etc. referred. So these were called Shudras of that time. Dividation of caste was there, and in the dividation, upper caste, then Vaishyas, then Shudras were there, and at the lowest rung were those who labored to keep cities and villages clean or worked at jobs that upper caste considered polluting, that it could be led to the loss of caste status. See this one, the last rank, the lowest rank was the rank considered polluting on that time. So this one is the dividation of caste system in India. The upper caste also treated many of these groups at the bottom as untouchable. इनको जो लोवेस्ट क्लास के लोग थे, इनको अपर क्लास वाले क्या कहते थे बच्चों? अनटचेबल. इट मीन्स इनको हम टच नहीं कर सकते हैं. They were not allowed to enter temples. See the situations of these untouchables. They were not allowed to enter in temples, draw water from the wells used by the upper caste, or bath in ponds where upper caste bath. So the situation was very critical. These untouchables or these lowest class peoples were totally not allowed, maybe for entering in the temple, maybe for using the wells which the upper class peoples were using. And same, if upper class peoples bath in the pond or a river, then these untouchables were not allowed to bath on the same ponds or river. They were seen as inferior human beings. See the condition, they were considered as the inferior human beings. Over the 19th century and 20th centuries, many of these norms and perceptions slowly changed. Change came in a very slight movement, in a very slow process. Changes came in the system of upper class, lower class, untouchables, etc. See, working towards change. What workings were there for the changes in the lives of these peoples? From the early 19th century, we find debates and discussions about social customs and practices taking on a new character. See, many debates were held on that time. Many discussions, social discussions also held on that time only for the changing process of our casting system. One important reason for this was the development of new forms of communication. See, then what happened on that time? When new forms of communication arose on that time, many changes took place. And for the first time, books, newspapers, magazines, leaflets and pamphlets were printed on that time. Many things were changed, and in this changing, see, many pamphlets, many magazines, many leaflets and other things were in the printing form. What happened to the other issues? See, all kinds of issues such as social, political, economic and religious could now be debated and discussed by men and sometimes by women also in the new cities. New cities की जब हम बात करते हैं, many situations were there on that time. In that situations, many debates and discussions held during that period. In that period, males as well as sometimes females also supported and took part in all these things. The discussions could reach out to a wider public and could become linked to movements for social changes. Many movements took place on that time, many changes took place on that time, and for the purpose of the social changes, many debates and discussions held on that time, and all men as well as women participated in that one for the social reformation. See, these debates were often initiated by Indian reformers and reform groups. कौन करता था ये डिबेट? ऑर्गेनाइज कौन करता था बच्चों? यस, ये जो डिबेट्स हैं ये ऑर्गेनाइज करते थे इंडियन रिफॉर्मर्स, एंड रिफॉर्म ग्रुप्स जो बने हुए थे वो इनको ऑर्गेनाइज करते थे. One such reformer was Raja Ram Mohan Rai. See, the reformer Raja Ram Mohan Rai, who was born in the year 1772 and he died in the year 1833. And when we are talking about Raja Ram Mohan Rai, he took the initiative to reform the social changes in the Indians, in the India. He founded a reform association for this one, which was known as the ब्रह्मो सभा और लेटर नॉन एज द ब्रह्म समाज. पहले तो इसको क्या कहा गया बच्चों? ब्रह्मो सभा कहा गया. देन लेटर ऑन इट वाज नोन एज द ब्रह्म समाज इन कैलकाटा. Where this association reformed? This association reformed in Calcutta. People such as Raja Ram Mohan Rai are described as reformers. क्यों कहलाते थे ये reformers? What is the reason behind it that the Raja Ram Mohan Rai was known as the reformers of that time? Because they felt that changes were necessary in society. The main reason is that changes took place in society, and these are the necessary steps at present also, students. These are the necessary steps for the formation of our social life. See, and unjust practices needed to be done away with all these things. That's why Raja Ram Mohan Rai reformed this one, and he was known as the what? Reformer of that time. Many changes, but reformers did all these things. They thought that the best way to ensure such changes was by persuading people to give up old practices and adopt a new way of life. आपने खुद ने देखा होगा बच्चों, क्या होता है ज़िंदगी में. पहले आप रेगुलर क्लासेस लेते थे, बट सम क्राइसिस हैपेंड एंड आफ्टर दैट you are taking online as well as offline classes. Same here, he thought, and other reformers also thought, that the best way to ensure the changes was by only the reason why persuading the peoples for the give up of old practices and adopt a new way of life, new pattern of life, in which many things were changing on that time. Still many things are changing at present also, students. We are adopting new way of life here also. See, Raja Ram Mohan Rai was keen to spread the knowledge of Western education. He supported Western education. In the previous chapter, we talked about the situations of the education policies and other thinkers also, and in that one also we read about that many thinkers were there who supported Western education as well as Indian education. So what happened? He was keen to spread the knowledge of Western education in the country and bring about great freedom and equality for women. This one is the main theme for himself, that the greater freedom and equality for women is our right and we will take this. और हमने देखा राजा राम मोहन राय ने काफ़ी सोशल लाइफ में चेंजेस भी करवाए थे. He wrote about the way women were forced to bear the burden of domestic work, confined to the home and the kitchen, and not allowed to move out and become educated. On that time, students, the condition of the women was so much critical, so much worst, that these reformers took a step for the formation, for the changes of the lives of the women. When we are talking about women, see, he wrote many things about this one. He forced these women in the way that why only domestic work was in your life, why only the home confined work was in your life, why only the kitchen, why you are not allowed to go outside and become educated. So Raja Ram Mohan Rai took a change reformer work, and he changed many things with the help of the Britishers, with the help of the Indian thinkers and reformers in his life as well as in his surroundings. When we are talking about Calcutta, the situations of the women were very critical, very worst, and he was the person who took steps. Students, we will continue this chapter in our next session, so stay with us. Have a nice day.